In this presentation, I'm going to go over the specifics of the ASCP BOC exam, how it's created, how it adapts to your level of ability to determine whether you have the knowledge and skills to become certified as an MLT. The ASCP uses a computer adaptive testing, also called a CAT exam. So this is an adaptive test. A non-adaptive test is where all test takers are given the same exact exam. Back in the day, we all went to this huge auditorium. We were each given a booklet that had the same exam, and we would bubble in our numbers on a Scantron sheet. Well, CAT is a style of testing in which the test difficulty is automatically adjusted during the test based on your performance. For this reason, it's also called tailored testing. It's a form of CAT in which the next item or set of items selected to be administered depends on the correctness of your responses to the most recent item administered. So when we have a non-adaptive test, it's very flat, and it doesn't, everybody's asked the same question, so there's no way for the test to discriminate. But in a computer adaptive testing, because it's selecting the answer based on your previous answers, it will tailor the exam to know more accurately what your abilities are. In fact, I've been told that after 20 questions, it knows if you passed or failed, but it gives everybody 100 questions. And I think the nursing exam, once you pass, the exam stops and it says pass. But no, we're not that lucky. So the CAT successively selects questions for the purpose of maximizing the precision of the exam. And this is based on what is known about you from previous questions. So for example, everybody starts with the same type of question, the same level. It's at the pass point. And so if you do well on that, if you get that one correct, then you will be presented with a slightly more difficult question. Or if you perform poorly, meaning you got the question wrong, you'll get an easier question. Compared to static multiple choice tests that have a fixed set of items administered to all examinees, CAT tests require fewer test items to arrive at equally accurate scores. Back in the day when it was a booklet, there were 200 questions. But because we've gone to CAT, you now only have to do 100 questions. The advantages of CAT testing are they're more efficient and appropriate for students in a typical paper and pencil test. Again, 100 questions versus 200. The items are more secure because they're drawn from a large bank of questions, and the next question is selected based on the answer to the current question. Also, the question selection takes into consideration the number of times the question's been used to prevent overexposure. And then statistical analysis of questions is performed annually to revise, delete, and add questions. I was on one of the exam review committees for the BOC, and it's amazing the amount of work done on these questions to validate them, put them into the exam, and then to follow them and track them as time goes on. Some additional advantages are testing is by individual appointment in a computer carrel, which affords quiet and privacy, versus when we were like cattle all being put in this huge room, and there wasn't noise but the rustling of pencils and papers, maybe somebody's chewing gum. This is a much more calm environment. You take fewer questions, there's less time to take the test. We had 4 hours, you have 2 hours and 30 minutes. It's simpler to enter answers and review than paper testing. If you've ever in your life done a Scantron and gotten off by 1, that is the most horrible time in your life for an exam. So then you have to go back. So there's none of that. One question at a time, and you just answer it. And the score reporting requires a shorter time. Again, you're going to hit that submit button, and it's going to say pass. So you are presented with a question, and you must answer that to the best of your ability when it is presented. Again, it determines your overall ability from the beginning of the exam. From that first question that you're asked. You can't skip over, but you can like put a mark on the question to come back to it. It doesn't mean you can't change your answer, but remember, every question selected is based on the previous question. So if you skip, they wouldn't know how to adapt the exam for you. The other disadvantageous thing is the subject areas are rotated throughout the exam. You'll get a blood bank question, you'll get a micro question, then you'll get a chemistry question. I don't like that because back in the day, all the blood bank questions were together, chemistry questions were together, so you could focus, and recall that information. But again, this is how it is, and one thing that we have found is students say, gosh, I've got so many micro questions, and usually that means that was probably your weakest area. This is one of the most important pieces of advice that I will give you. Never trick the computer by answering the beginning questions wrong with the idea that an easier exam will be given. This technique, if you use it, can quickly lower the calculated score to a point where you will fail the exam. So let me explain that. So this is an illustration of two students taking a CAT exam. Both students start with a question of average difficulty. This is pass. If it's below this, that's fail. If it's above this, this is pass. So student 1 answers the first question right, gets a more difficult question, but gets this one wrong. They're given an easier question, but it's still above the pass level. And let's say the next question they get wrong. But as long as their level of difficulty, these questions are of difficulty that are above pass, they will pass the exam. This student, unfortunately, purposely missed that first question, so they got an easier question, which they got right. And then they got a little bit more difficult, but unfortunately it's still below the pass, and they got that wrong. So they get an easier question, and they get that one right. An easier question, they get that right. And finally they get one right that's above the pass level. But do you see how they will sink themselves into a hole by purposely answering a question wrong to get an easier test? Or maybe this is a student who didn't have the knowledge and skills to pass the test. So again, answer every question to the best of your ability. Scoring on the tax exam is based on the difficulty, and we call this taxonomy level of the questions answered correctly, and not solely on the number of right answers. All questions used have been field tested on numerous examinees. I've written questions for the BOC, but what happens is they're put in as questions that don't go against your score. So we test them. You never know whether you're getting a real question or one of these field tested questions. And once it goes through, I forget how many cycles, and it does well, then it's actually put on the real exam. So let's discuss the taxonomy levels in the cognitive domain. Cognitive is your brain, recall, everything that you pull from there, versus psychomotors, which things you do with your hands. So recall is remembering learned information. So you've given a picture of a cell, and what is this cell? So very, very basic, relatively easy, although some recalls can be difficult. Application, number 2, understanding information and applying it to other material or new situations. Given the data, perform a calculation. So here's a hemocytometer, these are the counts, calculate the number of cells. Problem solving is the most difficult type of question. You won't get many of them, but this is analyzing, reorganizing, and synthesizing the information and making decisions and judgments based on information. So for example, a QC problem is given the data, what would you do next? So number 1, you would have to know, are these controls in or out? If they're out, at what level of out are they, and what would I do next? So those are the 3 taxonomy levels. So once again, there's 100 examination questions. You will have 2 hours and 30 minutes. And the test stops automatically after the allotted time. So you want to give yourself enough time to get through the exam. We had a student who failed the exam by, I think remember 400 is passed. I think her score was 398. She said, Terry, I didn't answer the last question. Probably if she'd gotten that question right, she would have passed that exam. So be sure that you pace yourself throughout the exam so that you can get through all questions. All questions will be multiple choice with one best answer. And that's why I have stressed to my instructors that all of your exams should be one STEM with 4 potential answers, not multiple choice, not stump the student, all the following except, all of the above, none of the above. Those are not, you will not find those types of questions on the BOC. Each question is calibrated for level of difficulty and assigned a content area. And the weight is given to each question is determined by level of difficulty. So when we are reviewing the exam on the BOC committee, if our best students are missing a certain question, then that may be a bad question and we need to either modify it or throw it out. So especially if it happens 2 or 3 years in a row. So I want to let you know that there is a lot of work that's done on these exams to make sure they're as fair and equitable as possible to measure your abilities to practice in the field. So here's a more specific link going to register for the exam. Your BOC application fees are non-refundable. So if something comes up and you can't take the test on your designated date, you can reschedule it. But again, be aware that the longer you wait to take it may not be in your best interest. Transcripts, once your degree is awarded, request the official transcripts to be sent to the BOC. For certificates, individuals send in their transcripts ASAP, and that would not be you. So again, I can't emphasize enough, once you complete the program and your official transcript is ready, then send it to the BOC. Once your application is accepted, instructions will be sent to you as to how to schedule your exam at Pearson VUE. And if you wish to request modifications because of a disability, you must notify them in writing at the time of application. Again, do not submit your application until you have contacted the BOC. And this includes providing a letter of diagnosis from an appropriate professional specifying the needed modification. So what are some tips for physically and emotionally preparing for the exam? Take the certification exam within 2 weeks of graduation of the program. Now, I need to add this in here. Just because you signed up for the exam and your application was accepted does not mean you can drop out of the program. Because yes, theoretically you could go and take that exam, and theoretically you could pass that exam, but if they don't receive your official transcript documenting your degree, you will never be certified, ever. You have no proof, except for when you hit the button it said pass. You will not receive your certificate until they get your official transcript. Or let's say that you drop out of the program in the last minute, the program director then notifies the BOC, or let's say you, worst case scenario, you fail one of your last courses, we will withdraw our approval for you taking the exam. So again, take it as soon as possible after graduation. Get sufficient rest before exam day. Quit studying at 5 to 6 p.m. the day before. Quit. Stop. Do something relaxing. Watch a favorite movie. Eat a nice meal. Do whatever you can to get in your happy place, but do not study after 6 p.m. the day before the exam. The day of the test, eat. Eat before the test. Do not skip a meal. Try eating a light snack just before the test. So eat, I don't know when you take it, but if it's morning, eat a good breakfast or eat a good lunch. And you're not in an auditorium, but I just would hate for your stomach to be growling, and then that will distract you from the exam because you're hungry. On the other side, don't eat too heavy of a meal, because you don't want to eat too much or too heavy of a meal, because that may make you sleepy. Drink plenty of water. We all have to take courses to complete our degree, to be a well-rounded student. And so one of my courses I took, one of the only gems I got from it is that drinking water wakes you up. And students should be allowed to have water at their desk all the time, within reason, or allowed adequate water breaks, because hydrating your brain will help you focus, concentrate, and more easily recall the information. Dress comfortably, and layered clothing provides alternatives if a room is too hot or too cold. So you can't take sweaters or jackets in there, but you can wear a t-shirt and then another shirt and another shirt. On the day of the exam, allow time to get to the testing center. The recommendation is to arrive at least 30 minutes early to the site, because you have to do all the processing. Watch that little video, because it's not just arrive and go take the test. No, you have to be processed in. Also, I would recommend that you take a dry run to the site, because that will give you, and take it at the time that you'll be taking the exam, so you know what traffic is like. If you have an app on your phone like Waze, W-A-Z-E, you can put in your address, the testing center address, what time you're going to leave, and it will give you a relatively accurate time of arrival. And always expect traffic. Always expect that there's going to be a wreck. So again, get there 30 minutes early. As soon as your time starts, you've been processed in, they'll give you a whiteboard. Again, watch that video. Write down all of the common formulas or equations on the material provided. So what is the correction for a nucleated red cell on a count? What is, I don't know, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but every calculation that you need, look at the content outline for MLT. They list some of the formulas that you will be needing to memorize to do well on the exam. Manage your time wisely. Recommend about 1.5 minutes per question. So take time at the beginning of the test to build your baseline score. So pace yourself so you can complete the test in the allotted time frame. I can't emphasize how important that beginning of the exam is, because that's setting you on the pass track or the fail track. Some test taking tips: be positive and confident in your abilities. Play those head games with yourself. I can do this. I have studied hard for this entire year. I've been provided with all the tools to do well and be successful in this exam. So keep saying that to yourself. And when those negative little comments start coming in, just close the door. Mentally close the door on those negative comments. Read all the directions carefully. This is not a time to skim through and assume facts not in evidence. Read the questions carefully and note key words. Don't overthink. The questions are what the questions are. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. No, take it for what it is. They've worked very hard on getting these questions to be very clear cut with, and there's the potential answers. We want you to, be able to think, but there's only one best answer. Go with your first choice. If you have second thoughts about your answer, trust your first instinct unless you're absolutely sure you were wrong. And there are times that students have gone back and changed the question to a correct answer. Remember, if you're unsure, there is a way to mark that question for review. Anticipate the answer. What that means is read the question, maybe even put your hand over the answers on the screen, and in your brain come up with the correct answer, and then look at the answer choices. Draw illustrations if it helps clarify the meaning. For example, the Coombs test, the indirect versus the direct antiglobulin test. Be sure that you know the steps in that procedure, so that a lot of times that illustration will help you. Eliminate answers. If you're uncertain, eliminate the ones that you absolutely know are wrong. Don't look for answers to follow in a pattern. They usually don't. And I used to have a student when I had written tests that she said, "Terry, I've learned on your exams, if I don't know the answer is B." So then I went through all my exams and made sure I had the same numbers of A's, B's, and C's. But on this type of exam, it matters not, because they're going to scramble the answers for every question. Don't leave answers blank. Answer every question. And then once you're done, check over your test. So this is a young man who maybe didn't prepare mentally for this exam. You need to expect that there will be anxiety. Being concerned will help you do your best on your test, but don't be to the point that you are, I hate to use the term, freaking out. Do not panic if you don't know the answer. There will be questions you will not know the answer to. Just do the best you can. Use those tips of trying to weed out the incorrect ones, and then maybe you'll have a 50-50 choice. Continue the test and do not allow anxiety make you forget items you know. And this is my best tip for stress reduction. It's called the deep cleansing breath. Take 3 deep cleansing breaths with your eyes closed. Take the breath in with your nose, hold it for a few seconds, and then slowly breathe in, slowly breathe out. And I promise you, this is something I learned at a stress reduction workshop, and it has helped me. I use it to this day. So here again is the URL to the Pearson website. Upon check-in, they're going to collect your signature, a photographic image, a fingerprint palm vein image. Writing materials will be provided, so as soon as you sit down, write that information that you're most likely to forget. Formulas, equations. Of course, we don't need dates because they're not going to ask you historical questions. And they will give you the non-programmable calculator. The passing score is 400 or higher, and again, this is your overall score. The maximum score that can be earned is a 999, and one of my colleagues did have that honor of saying one of her students scored that. That is a perfect score. As soon as you submit your exam, pass or fail will be displayed. The results provided within 10 days if ASCP has a final university transcript showing the degree awarded. And again, it's your responsibility to have your final transcript sent to the BOC. Do this as soon as the official transcript is available. And I just love this picture because all of these students or graduates, they click submit and they all pass and they jumped in the air for joy. And I don't know if they'll allow you to jump for joy. I'm sure they'll let you know what is appropriate behavior. I have no doubt that each and every one of you will pass this exam. We have provided you with all of the tools and the information and the training to be successful. Now what you need to do is keep all that information at the front of your brain as long as possible, and that's why you need to take this as soon as possible after graduation. There will be a question answer session, so write all your questions down and have those ready. Good luck, everyone.